Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for December the 11th of 2019. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news from around the industry 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, right here on youtube.com/Samuel Adams Media, as well as podcast services around the world. So if you enjoy the show, you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and keep yourself up to date. But with that being said, yesterday was a very big day for PlayStation fans because the final State of Play of the year, the Nintendo Direct style presentation, certainly did bring some big news to the table. I'll be giving you a brief overview, and then we'll be diving into some of the biggest points to make. Then we will talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake, which has been listed as a timed exclusive on PS4 until March of 2021. Then we will dive into the Nintendo Indie World, the big presentation that showed off what you can expect from the Nindies over the course of the next year or so. Then sales are down yet again at, of course, GameStop, the failing retailer that is pretty much running into issues worldwide. And finally, the Doom Slayers collection is so much Doom for $30. A very good bundle for you to dive into. But speaking of diving into things, let's go ahead and dive into today's top gaming news. First off, everything announced in the December 10th PlayStation State of Play. Resident Evil, Predator, Kingdom Hearts, and more. So we're going to be going through the list and hitting each individual thing sequentially. I said H because we're in the South. But we're going to be going through and hitting off the highlights, and then we'll dive into more of the details. So Untitled Goose Game is coming to PS4 on December the 17th. Also worth noting, coming to the Xbox One as well. And of course, IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, calling it a brief but endlessly charming adventure. Now, I do want to point one thing out here, is that if you do play it on the Xbox One, the game is also going to be added to Xbox Game Pass subscription services. So if you do want to get the game for quote-unquote free with your subscription service, then you very well could. But it is coming to the PS4. Then we have Spellbreak, a magic battle royale, has been alpha testing on PC for some time, and we now know it will be getting a closed beta on PS4 in spring of 2020. Dreams, the brand new Media Molecule, widely open create a game, art, music, anything tool, has been in early access since its release, but now it will have a full release on February the 14th, which of course adds a full story campaign for those who want a more guided experience. Then Superliminal is a very cool game that I know a lot of streamers have been playing lately, but it's the incredibly GIF-worthy game, which takes a Stanley Parable-esque approach to its perspective puzzles and has been out on PC for a month or so, but it's getting a PS4 console release at some unspecified point in the future. Paper Beast is a bizarre-looking PS VR game coming from the makers of Another World. It's said to be out in Q1 2020. Gameplay shows off a menagerie of Paper Beast being helped and hindered by a player using something like a world-altering fishing rod. Very interesting game, to say the least, with that one. Not sure, but it definitely is a PS VR experience to, put it into perspective. So, it's going to be a very all-encompassing kind of thing. Then Kingdom Hearts 3's Remind DLC. A leaked trailer had all but confirmed it, but now we know that the Kingdom Hearts 3 expansion is coming out on January the 23rd, and it brings back Final Fantasy characters Leon, Yuffie, and Aerith as part of the ride. Then Predator Hunting Grounds. The makers of Friday the 13th, the game, are bringing their next 80s revival to PS4 and PC on April the 24th. Gameplay showed off more third-person predators, including female versions, and first-person humans trying to fight them off. Must admit, very excited about this game. So for those that don't know, Predator Hunting Grounds is kind of like an asymmetrical approach to multiplayer, where you do have one person hunting down humans, which is pretty fun, to say the least. And it kind of has the Evolve style approach if you want to compare it to a game that came out in the past 5 years or so. But as a big fan of Predator, and as somebody who definitely admires what was done with Friday the 13th, the game, can't help but be excited about Predator Hunting Grounds when it launches in April of 2020. Then Babylon's Fall. Platinum's collaboration with Square Enix was announced 2 E3s ago, and we've finally seen what the game is. The action looks similar to Platinum fans, but the game's looks are extremely Dark Souls. As for when we will actually get to play it, we are told there will be more info next summer, which means it's significantly delayed out of its original 2019 release window. This looks like a very, very cool game. I'm a big fan of how this one is shaping up. Of course, I prefer to watch Platinum games more so than necessarily actually playing them because I have my limits. I become very frustrated, and it is what it is with that. But I must admit, this game looks gorgeous. I have always loved the Platinum combat, and it's definitely something to look forward to. And I think that this one could be worth the wait, but if you are expecting this to be a PS4 game, I would say at the very least it's going to be cross-generational, if not completely on the PlayStation 5 and whatever consoles might be coming out of that generation as well. However, if you are into the Dark Souls style combat and appearance, then by all means you might want to dive into this one, although it's looking more like Bayonetta-ish than Dark Souls-ish. But then we have Resident Evil 3's Remake, which we'll dive into more in a moment, and finally a Ghost of Tsushima teaser, which is going to be bringing some big news coming in just a couple of days at the Game Awards. So we'll talk more about that in just a couple of days. But moving on to the big points here. Resident Evil 3 Remake hits PS4, Xbox One, and PC on April the 3rd. It will include Capcom's 4v1 survival game Resident Evil Resistance as well. That was the big shocker for me. Following its acclaimed remake of Resident Evil 2, Capcom is going back to Raccoon City to rework the next entry in the survival horror series. The RE3 reboot was confirmed during Sony's State of Play stream Tuesday, along with an April 3rd release date for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. As you might remember, if you played Resident Evil 3 Nemesis the first time around, you'll play as Jill Valentine. The heroine tries to escape the T-virus-ridden city and the relentless creature Nemesis at around the same time as the events of Resident Evil 2 play out. The remake, which offers updated visuals and more content, is built on Capcom's RE engine that also powers RE7 Biohazard, RE2, and Devil May Cry 5. Rumors of an RE3 reboot intensified last month while covers of the game popped up on PS Network in early December, as unearthed by tracker GameStop. To sweeten the pot, the remake will include Resident Evil Resistance, a 4v1 survival game Capcom announced in September. Again, another asymmetrical multiplayer game. So this is a very big deal because, of course, Resident Evil 2, phenomenal game. Up for Game of the Year, if I remember correctly. And on top of that, it just surpassed 5 million in sales, officially making it more successful than the original Resident Evil 2 that released on the PlayStation 1. So with Resident Evil 3, of course, this is going to be another fan favorite coming back into the limelight, and I'm shocked at how soon it's coming out. Really only about 4 months away, which I think is a pretty good time frame to release something like this on. If you were to announce a remake a year out or more, you are going to be running into some issues of people losing interest before the game even hits store shelves. So to see that's not going to be the case and to see it coming out on April the 3rd across all platforms is something that I definitely think is a good move. But even more interesting than that, Resident Evil Resistance is also included with the game. Now, of course, this was a game that was revealed a couple of weeks back, and of course, it kind of was received with a positive mixed reception, I would say. I think a lot of people wanted the classic RE3 style game, but Resistance definitely brings something new to the table, and I don't think it's going to be quite as bad as Umbrella Corps or any of the other Resident Evil spin-offs that we have seen in the past. So regardless, very excited to see how this all shakes out. But if you did want to get into Resident Evil 3's Remake or Resident Evil Resistance, they're bundled together and coming out on April the 3rd across all platforms. Then Dreams finally has a PS4 release date confirmed for February 2020. And there we have it. Following a long stint in early access and a potential leak, we now have the final release date for Media Molecule's Dreams at last. The impossibly huge creation engine received a wonderful new trailer during the latest State of Play broadcast, and right at the end, we got that elusive date we've all been waiting for. Dreams releases on PS4 on 14th of February 2020. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. So this is one that's strange to me because I'm still not exactly sure about the game itself. The concept of it is something that I think is amazing because anybody can make whatever they want. If you don't know what Dreams is, it's essentially a platform for game development. But on top of that, you can also have an entire campaign, which Media Molecule has baked into the game, for those that do want the traditional kind of experience. But the amount of exploration, the amount of testing, the amount of community creation in the world of Dreams is going to be very impressive, if I had to say so. So if you do want to give it a shot again, it's coming out in just a couple of months, February 14th of 2020, but a very interesting game, and one that I think is breaking boundaries that haven't been broken in the gaming industry, because traditionally you've had a game that comes out that does one thing. It presents a thing for you to experience, and a lot of people love that kind of experience. But to be able to use your imagination, to be able to create things from the ground up, to be able to program entire experiences with the ease of just using a DualShock. That's something that we haven't really seen before in a big way like this. And so I do believe there's going to be a pretty cool audience for this. And I would also mention, if you were into streaming or content creation, going through the community creations and just exploring what people have made, that right there is going to be some interesting exploration. I mean, look at that. Somebody made Wipeout. Did you see that? The amount of stuff you can do in this game is mind-boggling, to say the least. But coming out in February of 2020. And of course, as we mentioned, Untitled Goose Game is coming to Xbox Game Pass PS4 next week. Very exciting stuff. Of course, the game is already out right now on the Switch and on the PC, but if you did want to get into it on the PS4 and the Xbox One, coming on December the 17th. And yet again, I do want to mention Xbox Game Pass tweeting out important PSA, they're adding Untitled Goose Game next week. So if you want to dive into the big indie that was pretty much making the rounds on social media throughout 2019, then by all means, you should definitely dive into this one. But, of course, they are running limited time sales, lowering the price to $14.99 on the PS4 and the Xbox. So unless you have Xbox Game Pass, you could get the game at a bit of a discount. But a big one for the holiday season, to say the least, for the indie community. And glad to see it coming out of the Switch and PC shell. However, moving on, Final Fantasy VII's Remake has been listed as a PS4 timed exclusive until March of 2021. Box art for Square Enix's big Final Fantasy VII Remake lists the game as a PS4 timed exclusive until the 3rd of March 2021, a year after its initial PS4 release date. The North American cover art was posted on Twitter last night by internet tipster Wario64. While the sticker detailing the game's timed exclusivity is new, the box art has never featured the only on PlayStation branding, which other PS4 exclusives have. Final Fantasy VII Remake was unveiled during PlayStation's E3 2015 press conference and popped up in PlayStation's State of Play broadcast. Last month, Xbox boss Phil Spencer announced a renewed focus on bringing Final Fantasy games to Xbox platforms. Speaking to press during a pre-XO19 event attended by Eurogamer, Spencer announced 9 Final Fantasy games coming to Xbox Game Pass in 2020, from 7 to 15. Square Enix's MMO Final Fantasy XIV is also on the way. But for PlayStation fans, of course, nothing has changed. The remake launches for PS4 on the 3rd of March of next year and is looking lovely. So this is an interesting tidbit. I feel like this is going to kind of throw a wrench in things because of the way this game is going to branch console generations now. I thought this was going to be something that was just launched and existed. I didn't know there was any kind of exclusivity talk to begin with. But if this is going to be exclusive on PS4, I think it could launch first on PS4, then it could come to all consoles, and it's either going to be, of course, backwards compatible on the Xbox platforms, but it very well could be up-resed, upgraded, whatever you want to call it, to the next generation as well, which I feel like should be the plan to begin with, because what a waste of development that would be for this game to be trapped at the tail end of a console lifecycle. I mean, people have been waiting on this game since pretty much the beginning of this console generation. But again, the game is coming out on the 3rd of March of 2021. For the Xbox and other platforms, but it is going to be a PS4 exclusive on, of course, the PlayStation 4 as of the 3rd of March of 2020. However, diving into Nintendo's Indie World, there's some big announcements to break down. Today's Indie World presentation from Nintendo was surprisingly packed full of big announcements, including sequels to Indie Switch hits Axiom Verge and Golf Story. Here's a rundown of the big stuff you missed if you weren't watching along. Developer Tom Happ showed a short look at Axiom Verge, which will be available in the fall of 2020. A Nintendo press release says it will explore the origins of the Axiom Verge universe. Before that, in mid-2020, we will get Sports Story, a sequel to the RPG Golf Story that combines many different sports like baseball, tennis, soccer, and probably more. Skatebird is coming in late 2020. It's about a bird on a skateboard, and it looks wonderful. Gleam Light from the development studio, that did Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, is a side-scrolling action game with a stained glass look in which you play as a sword. Super Mash, coming in May, is set in a game shop owned by a brother and sister who discover a mysterious game console. Every time they turn it on, it mashes different game genres together. Looks cool. Speaking of mashups, Boyfriend Dungeon finally puts dungeon crawling and dating sims together. Date your boyfriends, battle with them in dungeons, the whole package. Here's a wild one. The developers of Head of a Boyfriend are teaming with the composer of Ace Attorney for Murder by Numbers, a combo of visual novel and Picross. Then The Survivalist is a pixel art survival online multiplayer game from Team 17, and the classic shooter Oddworld Stranger's Wrath is coming to Switch in January. So if you wanted to dive into any of these, those are all coming out in the indie space on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, the big standout here for me is Axiom Verge 2, as they have linked at the beginning of this article, because Axiom Verge has pretty much been a icon in the indie space. It really was. The developed by one man, put out into the world, taken over by storm success story that everybody has kind of come to expect from at least a couple of indie games from time to time. But the art of Axiom Verge, the gameplay of Axiom Verge, just screams classic experience. And so to see it getting a sequel is something that I think a lot of people are going to enjoy. But a very fun game, one that I think a lot of people are going to be picking up on day one because, hey, people loved Axiom Verge, and I think they could love this one. So we will see what happens with that. Again, if you want to check out the entire breakdown, the Kotaku article is linked down below. So you can head over there and find it for yourself and check out stuff like Boyfriend Dungeon and Super Mash, which I'm not going to cover in depth on today's show. Also, Sports Story, another interesting one. Golf Story was kind of an indie darling that hit at the beginning of the Switch generation, and it did get some traction, but I think that it was kind of successful because of the time frame in which it was released. There wasn't too much going on the Switch at that specific point in time, so a lot of games probably got some, movement that they might not have gotten otherwise. But cool to see it getting an entire sequel, and I feel like they could have probably spun these off into individual games, but they didn't. They made it into one. But you might not be buying any of these games at GameStop because it looks like that retailer is continuing its decline because sales are down 25% at the close of GameStop's third quarter. Sales across nearly every product category at video game retailer GameStop declined year over year, with the once ailing company's collectible business once again representing the lone rise in year-over-year sales. GameStop as a whole reported a net loss of $83.4 million, which is less than the $488.6 million lost the company year prior, with a couple of caveats. That GAAP number for the quarter ending November 2nd, 2019 includes $43 million in impairment charges. GameStop also notes that the previous year's loss included the Spring Mobile business that it has since sold off. Sales have been on a downturn for a while now at GameStop, and this quarter continues that trend. As a whole, global sales are down 25.7% from last year's $2.1 billion, coming in at $1.4 billion for the quarter. Looking at it on a category-to-category basis, new hardware sales fell. New hardware sales fell 45.8% year over year as a new console generation looms on the horizon. New software sales fell 32.6% following the previous year's new release boosted strong numbers, while accessory sales fell 13.4% and pre-owned sales, including both hardware and software, fell 13.3%. In case you didn't catch that, the only thing doing marginally well are collectibles, because meanwhile, they were once again the only category to show a year-over-year increase, though the jump is not as strong as the one reported last quarter. Sales of collectibles for the quarter rose 4.3% year-over-year, thanks to both international and domestic growth. And all of this comes as GameStop continues to endure a brand-wide reboot in an effort to bring the brand back into the public and financial favor. During the third quarter, that restructuring effort resulted in over 120 layoffs across GameStop as a whole, including half of the editorial staff at the GameStop-owned publication Game Informer. Quote, "Despite the current top-line trends, we are pleased with the continued strong progress that we are making against our strategic initiatives as we transform GameStop for the future," said a statement from GameStop CEO George Sherman. "We remain on track to achieve our $200 million annualized operating profit improvement goal by 2021, and we believe our strategic initiatives will enable us to achieve our long-term growth and profit objectives as we fully leverage our unique leadership position and brand in the video game space." Okay, well, they're winding down operations around the world. A lot of stores are closing. A lot of people are losing their jobs. I would be shocked if GameStop came back from this at this point, but I've said it before, and I'm going to stick by what I've always said. GameStop is a powerhouse. GameStop is a name brand that people recognize in the gaming space. And to see the sales down is to be expected at this point in the console cycles, because you do have the new hardware on the horizon. People don't want to invest in games right now when 1 year out they'll be buying the same exact games ported to the next console, hypothetically. That's the way that I would look at it. Accessory sales, the exact same kind of scenario. So you see this fall because people aren't buying pre-owned stuff. They aren't buying new stuff because new stuff is coming right down the pipe. So I think next year could be a bit of a turn for GameStop, but if it doesn't turn next year, I don't think it's going to be turning at all. But third quarter for GameStop, again, everything down except for the collectibles business, but overall sales are down 25%. But you might want to stop by and buy the Doom Slayers collection because you get so much Doom for $30. This is a very good deal. Rip and tear and shoot and blast and murder. With this many Doom games, you're going to have to find some more verbs to preoccupy yourself. Bethesda has blown the lid off the Doom Slayers collection, a quadrilogy of 4 Doom titles that are coming to PS4 and Xbox One under a single banner. For the price of $30, you'll get Doom, Doom 2, Doom 3, and 2016's Doom. Also featured as a poster, a controller skin, and a $10 rebate for anyone who buys Doom Eternal in March. There is something you probably want to note, however. There's a disclaimer that says the Doom Slayers collection comes with a download code for Doom, Doom 2, and Doom 3. They are not included on disc and require an internet connection to acquire. 2016 Doom appears on a disc in the case. Much like the trio of classic Doom that was announced at QuakeCon, Bethesda seems to have stealth released the Doom Slayers collection. Retailers like Amazon state that the game will arrive on Friday, December the 13th. That is a decent stocking stuffer. Of course, nothing like ripping and tearing during the holiday season. Now, a lot of people are going to take issue with the fact that the 3 classic Doom games are not available on the disc, and yeah, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, think about what you're getting. You get 2016's Doom, which is a phenomenal shooter, and you get 3 classics on top of that $10 rebate for Doom Eternal when it comes out in March, and some goodies like a controller skin and a poster. So for $30, this is the definitive way to get into 2016's Doom and kind of prep yourself for what is coming with Doom Eternal, which looks to be one of the biggest games of 2020. Although I'm still hesitant about it because it was pushed back. And we know what Bethesda's been doing lately. They haven't exactly been great. But we will see how that shapes out whenever March does roll around. But for right now, you could get the Doom Slayers collection because, man, that looks like some good stuff for a low price. But with that being said, that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed this one, drop me a like down below and let me know what your favorite announcement was from yesterday's State of Play. Did anything catch your eye? Are you excited about the future of PlayStation? But on top of that, let me know about anything else we covered in today's show. Would love to hear your thoughts. Until tomorrow, you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day. I will talk to you soon, and peace.